Good evening, and welcome to another cruddy version of Diatribes from the voice of doom. Now here's your cacophonous and caterwauling host, voice of doom. Now you say you're lonely. You cried the long night through. Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you. Now you say you're sorry for being so untrue. Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried and cried a river over you. Little song for you. Nobody knows who Ella Fitzgerald is, but she wrote the lyrics to that song. I wanted to do a diatribe about Crimea. And it's very difficult because nobody knows what's happening there right now. I just brought it up because I have YouTube on all night while I'm asleep, and I have bad dreams about drones coming at me or all kinds of weird things. I'm in some sort of a meeting with the G20 or whatever I'm doing, but it's all in my dreams because I leave the computer on while I'm asleep. Bad habit. And I woke up and I saw some things about Crimea, and they were all jumping up and down for joy. And I was like, well, what's this all about? So I look at it, and it's like the Crimeans are very happy that Madness's men have encroached and taken over their area because they like to think of themselves as Russians. So they were very happy. And I noticed when I looked at the video that it was from 2014. So I'm like, I wonder how things are nowadays in Crimea. Because at the same time I saw those videos, I saw some videos about the current state of affairs in Russia proper, Moscow, for instance, and the citizenry are more and more being oppressed. More and more they can't do anything. They can't use their bank cards. They can't use the ATMs. There's all kinds of problems due to the sanctions that weren't supposed to work, according to Petri dish. So they're suffering, and I thought it was interesting to see these Crimeans dancing in the street and playing their Russian songs, and they were so happy to be reunited with their countrymen. Now, when I looked at the map, you realize that Crimea is like a peninsula. It's exactly what it is. And they took over the peninsula, and although Russia, according to what I'm seeing, has tried to make up for some of the things that the Ukrainians did as far as their water supply, irrigation, real boring stuff that has nothing to do with anything. Nobody cares about how much food is grown, but there was some issues with Crimea being kind of cut off, and they're still cut off. They're very cut off. Everyone in Crimea, even back in 2014, was saying business is bad because tourists don't come here anymore like they used to, especially the Ukrainian tourists. They don't go to Crimea for their vacation. A lot of beaches down there, the Black Sea, whatever. Probably not as good as the beaches I grew up on in Hawaii, but that's just the way life goes. Things aren't fair. But I wanted to see how people are reacting now in Crimea, now that they're full-fledged Russians. And they should be very happy with what's going on. And you really can't find anything. Try going on the internet, look up, what's happening in Crimea today. You won't find much. you have to really do some digging. You might have to fly over there because they don't really want to say what's going on over there right now. And their only rationale for even the pickle that they put themselves in is, well, at least we're not the Ukraine. We just let the Russians roll in and welcome them with garlands and flowers and confetti or what have you. And all was well, because if things had gone differently, if madness had pulled the same kind of thing with Crimea and just bombed the living crap out of everything, then things would have been bad, wouldn't they? So they think they're lucky stars for that. But there's not enough information out there for me to do a diatribe about Crimea. I just like that Crimea River. I just keep having that phrase come into my head, and it's like I got to do a diatribe about Crimea because I like that. It's just stupid play on words. It's obvious. But the Russian populace is getting, they're suffering. And they're going to suffer more. And it's lucky they don't really suffer, because if war was the way it used to be, they'd be suffering. They'd be bombed day and night. But we can't wage war the way we used to in World War II or Korea, because our weaponry is much too sophisticated and one side has way more than the other. So you can't really fight back. It's like a 300-pound bully beating up on a 85-year-old guy who has respiratory breathing problems and asthma. It's just, you can't fight back. Even if you do get in a good blow, you're just going to get pummeled. So we don't know what's happening in Crimea, but I have a feeling that they're probably having buyer's remorse as far as letting madness take over, because if they had put up a fight, then maybe none of this would have happened in the first place, because he would have realized that everything was going to be a hard row to hoe. But he got Crimea so easily, and Belarus on his side, and all these other places, and I guess he took Georgia, and he thought he could do the same with Ukraine. Well, he's finding out different. Now he wants to negotiate. Every time madness runs into some problems where their armed forces are having a setback, he wants to have negotiations. So they negotiate for 2 or 3 days. They still get bombed, of course. So it makes a lot of sense. Let's negotiate while you're killing us. Good faith. But, it's ridiculous, because then he's just going to ramp it up again. So I don't know what they're going to negotiate. But we need not worry about that. That is foreign affairs that have nothing to do with the United States. What we did today was historic. Petri dish has pretty much done the legislation that will have his stupid-ass face carved onto Mount Rushmore. They might take out Abraham Lincoln and put him in there instead. Landmark legislation called, get ready for this, signed into law today, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, which is an amendment of the Matthew Shepard, James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. So it's about time. That is long overdue. Don't worry about gas. Gas is just a commodity. That has nothing to do with human beings. Prices, those are just numbers. It has nothing to do with people's quality of life. Lynching is something that was long overdue to be dealt with, because I am sick of all the lynching, and I'm sure you are too. How many lynchings have we had? We had the one lynching in the garage where there was a piece of rope hanging from a garage door, and that caused a big brouhaha. That was only about 5 years ago, or 4. And that was a horrible, horrible thing. Then we had the lynching of the person of color who was oppressed, who wanted to make it look like he lynched himself. That was a horrible thing, and It brought to light just how bad this lynching issue is. So I'm so happy that Petri dish at least had the wherewithal to get this law through. How many lynchings have there been? In actuality, most of the most recent lynchings have been in Africa, in Nigeria, and places of that nature. I wrote down some notes. Why should I bother? The James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Matthew Shepard. If you kill somebody, just give them the death penalty. It's a hate crime. We've got to make it worse. You know, if it was just a random crime, that's okay, but this was a hate crime. Now, we don't have to talk about hate crimes because it's so stupid. Because if a person of some certain ethnic background says, I hate white people with a passion, and I'm going to kill a white person, that is not a hate crime. Don't ask me why. It has something to do with the wording, how they did the legislation. In 1930s, Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynching. People were good all over, even in the Deep South in the 30s. They were like, we don't want to be. It was before Emmett Till, but a lot of these guys were lynched back in those days because they even talked to a white woman, flirted with them. They might be lynched. And the reason is because people are, they're insecure about themselves. It's very deep, and it's hateful, and it's a crime that should be dealt with in kind. And when I say in kind, I don't mean the same in kind as Petri dish says. I mean in kind. Like, yeah, hang him. And people did get hung. By the way, does anybody remember who John Allen Barry, Lawrence Russell Brewer, and John William King were? Like 20 years ago, over 20 years. They dragged a black man named James Byrd Jr. behind their truck just for kicks, for no reason at all, just because of hate. And it was a major watershed moment for hate crimes because it was heinous. But people didn't realize how common it was until they realized how many people were being dragged. And the number of lynchings is ridiculous. I mean, every state has had lynchings. Brewer was executed in 2011 and King in 2019. He lived another 21 years after his crime, but they were dealt with. The other one was given life in prison. So justice was served, I think, and I'm glad that justice will be served now with this legislation. I'm glad that Petri dish is stepping up to the plate and getting this done. Because I think if there's one issue in America that should have been dealt with a long time ago, it's lynching. Because if we see another one, man, people are going to lose it. If anybody sees one lynching right now, this whole planet would be set on fire. I mean, come on. Lynching? I'm not going to say much more. I'm not even going to go for 15 minutes because that's his idea of victory. Corey Spartacus is going to put that law on his desk and hang it up behind him on the wall. I made this happen. There's going to be serious penalties for lynching in America from now on. So anybody that thought that they were going to go do a lynching, you better think twice now. There's going to be serious laws preventing you from doing that. So I'll leave it at that. I think I was sarcastic enough. I could have been more. It's pretty much off the cuff. I've had a few fireballs. So I'm not as articulate in the evening as I am in the morning. But I'm glad he did that. I'm proud. I'm proud of Petri dish, even if he is a demented, corrupt, senile, loud, obnoxious old fool. Other than that, he's okay. So we'll leave it at that. Happy anti-lynching day. I'm glad we've seen the last of that. Good night.